All right, thank you. This is Senate Health and Welfare. We are back on S25 and continuing our testimony. And we have the Attorney General with us. So welcome.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself for the record, and we'd love to hear your testimony.
I am Charity Clark, Attorney General, and very happy to be here on this bill, which I am very enthusiastic about. I acknowledge that in our office, we have the environmental unit and the consumer unit. And because of my years of experience working in the Attorney General's office before I became Attorney General, I knew about those two units and wanted to unite them in one division, which I've done, because I do find that there's such an overlap between consumer issues and environmental issues. And I, in Vermont, have picked up on this philosophy we have that we kind of, my sister-in-law has this phrase that she votes with her fork. You know, she makes, with her consumer choices, she's expressing her values. And I've thought of that many times. And I think that this is another area where I'm reading this bill and remembering what that's like to kind of make decisions with your consumer choices that reflect your values. So I wanted to note that we have united our consumer and environmental units, and this is exactly one of the reasons why. I also, as Attorney General, one of my kind of personal values in my professional role is to protect Vermonters. This bill is an opportunity for the state to protect Vermonters. And I do think this is a gendered issue with the cosmetics. Cosmetics are generally worn by women and not men. They're heavily unregulated. So I'm delighted to see that the protections here are acknowledging that they're not regulated, and maybe it's time to take a look at that. I know you've heard a lot of testimony on this bill, and so I don't want to belabor all the points I'm sure others have made, but wanted to kind of cut to the end where the penalties are, where the Attorney General's office is mentioned. So the Consumer Protection Act, which I've mentioned in this committee before, we are the experts at in Vermont, and happy to orient you, walk through what a claim might look like and all of that if you're interested. I also did want to note, I see that rulemaking has been provided for the Commissioner of Health on enforcement, which is fine, but I just wanted to FYI, through the Consumer Protection Act, the Attorney General's office always has rulemaking connected with the CPA.
So are you suggesting that we had talked about that? I think those of us who are on LPAR talked about that a little bit, and thinking that might be superfluous. And I'm wondering if you're saying the same.
I mean, I don't think it would hurt to give them authority through enforcement. It certainly wouldn't hurt anything. I just wanted to make you aware. I was just kind of envisioning like what that would look like for the commissioner to be doing it when it's really us doing enforcement, and we already have the authority. So I guess it could go either way, but I just wanted to flag that.
Okay. And all right, so we'll talk with our alleged counsel, and we'll talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I'm happy either way. Yeah, so this is fine. This tracks obviously previous bills that are similar where there's this overlap between consumer and toxins and whatnot. The Consumer Protection Act, I think, is perfect for this, and we of course do it all day long next door, and we'll be happy to add this to the list.
Senator Weeks.
Just curious, I'm sure you're aware that some of these chemicals are, it's kind of like we're following some of the larger states, but in this bill, we're potentially a little ahead of some of the other states. And I'm curious if you're hesitant about taking the lead and
I'm not. When it comes to consumer issues, Europe tends to be ahead of us. I think this is another area where they're ahead of us. I know because sometimes I try to get my sunscreen when people go to Europe, but I'm like, can you come back with the sunscreen? So I'm not worried. We do that in data privacy as well. Same. So the companies who are responding to, when we see this in the data privacy as an example, we see on our phone. Remember, all of a sudden it was like, why is my internet telling me about cookies? It's because Europe required that. So everyone started doing it. So I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
I also think it's really important when we're thinking about, well, we're protecting people, if we know that this is a toxin, if we have a value of protecting people, it's okay to be on the vanguard and know that other states are probably close behind. And I think when you go through that list, I think that's probably the case with those. If someone hasn't done it already, they're about to, so.
Go ahead, Senator Williams.
Do you ever see a coalition of states that might have more clout in getting this enacted from the industry end?
Yeah, definitely. I think it makes it, you know, when there's multiple, well, it's just like California. California is like the equivalent of many, many, many states. And when they do something, they can drive industry practice, which is a good thing. So I think that's true.
I'll add just a little bit, but when we started out with some of the chemicals like BPA and nobody else was regulating it, so it really did support movement in other states to make that happen, and now it's BPA, we're eliminating it. So it's nice to hear some confirmation that sometimes it's okay to get out ahead a little bit.
I mean, sometimes
California's-
they follow us sometimes.
Yeah.
They did in data privacy, you know,
Right.
sometimes we lead and other big, powerful places see that we're doing a good thing and they follow us.
Yeah, they do.
So, little Vermont, small but mighty.
Yeah. Any other questions? Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for your comments on this. They do resonate, I think, with most of us here. And also then the consumer protection piece, the penalties section. We'll talk with Ledge Council about that. We're on a really short timeline. We want to vote this bill out no later than tomorrow.
Yep.
And so our Ledge Council may be in touch with you regarding that section, depending on what we decide to do with it, whether we leave it or notify.
The rulemaking piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the rest of the section is standard language.
Yeah.
So yeah, sounds great. We're available and happy to work with you and also answer any questions if anyone has any. We're here.
You may be contacted by the reporter of the bill at some point, whoever that happens to be. And,
Sure.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, happy to be helpful there too.
And thank you for the Ghost Camp.
My pleasure. Enjoy them.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
All right. Is Holly Davies available?
Not yet.
And what about Avi Carr or
Nope.
Matt Chapman? I know Matt
Heard
Chapman.
nothing from any of them.
How about Matt? He's at a conference, I know, so it's gonna be difficult for him.
I've let them all know, but I've not heard anything.
All right. So what I'm gonna ask of us is that we look at S47 briefly together. Knowing that Katie is not with us, but we're gonna just switch gears for a minute and move on to S47. Which we have draft 2.1 that Katie has sent to us. Before we do that, Martine, did you want to talk briefly of within S25 about the athletic turf issue that we were discussing?
Are we on?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
on the record.
On the record, okay. What,
So in our bill, we have language that says athletic turf containing PFAS shall be banned for sale, use, however the word is, in Vermont by July 2023. And you had an experience in your district with a school vote, and I just wanted to share that with you.
right, so, we have a turf field that is well beyond its shelf life at BHS. And we just yesterday, as a school board, voted to, approve the various builders who have applied to do the work. So, now there's the process where they submit their bids. That's the stage that we're in right now. But it would, as I said to the chair, it would be extremely difficult for, at this point in the work, to say you can't have a turf field anymore, because we're like deeply into it. So I was hoping there might be something that we could do for Burlington, given that the wheels on the bus are already moving.
And we don't know, there may be other schools that have made a similar vote or municipalities that have made a similar vote just before 2023. So the question is, can we put some grandfathering or carve out in the bill for any municipality or district where the vote has taken place by such and such a date, and we can decide what the date is.
Yeah.
And so that's something to think about. I think it is important. Otherwise, it puts people in a really difficult spot.
So I'm curious why you couldn't go to turf or regular sod? Is it something that you've already purchased or you have a contract?
So we already have the turf, and apparently to go back to sod is not a simple matter. And we've already put the bids out for new turf, and we've already budgeted for it. I mean, it's in the budget. So the process is in motion. I think, I think way back when, had we all known about turf fields and how bad they are, we probably, things would have gone differently, but no one really knew about PFAS then. And no one knew about all
It wasn't public knowledge.
Yeah, it wasn't public knowledge.
We knew about it, but some of us knew. But look at your face.
I know, we'll talk later.
What are you?
No comment.
Safety is everything. So if you know that it causes health problems, why wouldn't the people in Burlington want to undo what they've done?
Yeah, but
Well,
Senator Gould's point, they're in the process. There needs to be a grandfather to some degree, so that people who are in the planning process have a pass until a certain date, and then,
Yeah,
right,
I get
you
that.
you can't just immediately
I'm
react.
just saying that, it's difficult to undo it, but it can be done. If it's, because how many years is that turf gonna be, how many kids are gonna have to play in it? I'm just concerned that some parents may say, gee, I don't want my kid playing soccer or football because of the turf.
yeah, I mean, that hasn't been our experience, given that it's Vermont and no one is on the field in the winter, for example. I don't think the hours of exposure are that great. And I think the newer turfs I would like to think are better than the older ones in terms of the
They
way
will
they're
be.
designed
It
and,
will be.
yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, well, and that is the conundrum. Totally agree with you about the public health implications and also the environmental implications. Remember,
Yes.
covered with snow, then the leachate goes into Lake Champlain, which is not far from that field. Oh, it is a huge concern.
I don't disagree with you at all. All I can say is this is a field that's used by the whole county and beyond, because we have,
All the kids are exposed.
but I mean, if there's one thing I've learned, it's time is a big factor in these exposures.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about PFAS leaching from fields to know what amount, how many hours, how many days, how many months, how many years of contact you have to have. Sure. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm just,
but it's an issue that we should deal with, I think, and I'm not averse to putting in some kind of a grandfathering by dates certain. I think that makes sense. But I also think it might be helpful as the bill goes forward, and we'll talk with our Department of Health. Or our DEC folks who are coming into this, to maybe send a letter and let the school board association and others understand the significance of contamination.
I definitely agree with you, and I think as we're looking at school construction aid too,
Same.
I mean, this is all gonna be in the same bucket,
Right.
and, if you wanna put a moratorium on turf fields, then that should just be, make sure that folks are aware of that, and
Yeah.
make sure, people have an understanding.
Yeah, well, that information will go out, but I'm just thinking in particular about where the plans are in place, or
Yeah.
at least nearly in place.
Yeah.
They are now.
Agreed.
All right. Okay. So why don't we, that was a good conversation regarding turf fields. And that's good. If you refresh your iPad, under Katie's name, you'll see, got it yet, but there's a new draft of S25 that Katie has put together. But I think we're gonna hold off on going through that right now. Is Holly Davies, is anyone else available at this point?
No, I don't have anybody ready to talk. Katie will be joining us as soon as she's over.
Yeah, okay. We'll hold off going through 25 until she's here. Let's go to committee. Is it your preference to look at S36 or S47? Leaning toward 36 now that I've said it.
That would be quicker.
I think 36 might be,
Yeah.
And I can get Senator Hurd back.
so that would be helpful.
Get the momentum.
Yeah, let's pick up S36, and that would be under Eric Fitzpatrick. We don't have it today, but we have it, did he send you the clean copy?
Most recent one I have is from yesterday.
Okay. Would you mind printing me a copy? My iPad is. Let's look at S36 together. Little concerned, people should not be leaving committee at this time.
We talked about when the tobacco bill might happen.
We'll have a conversation
Okay.
tomorrow. For folks who are on Zoom right now, we're waiting to get a clean copy of the draft of S36 to look at it for discussion and vote. So we're at a little break. You could take us off live, Alex.